I'm Holden Spaht, managing partner here at Thoma Bravo. I'm here with Brian Jaffee, my partner on our flagship team. Today, on Behind the Deal, we'll unpack the details of our acquisition of Instructure with insights from CEO Steve Daly. Steve, how are you, man?
I'm doing awesome. It's good to see you guys again.
Good to see you. Life all right?
Yeah, life is great.
Yeah.
It's busy.
Even without us?
Yeah, you know.
Better?
I'm getting
Probably
by.
better.
Yeah, Brian calls me every once in a while, so I get my fix.
Awesome. Well, look, we talked a lot about you here, but we're so excited to have you. You've been an incredible partner to us now more than once in successful investments. You know, we're huge fans of yours as a firm. So we're excited to have you walk the listeners through the experience at Instructure. So thank you for your time, man. We're fired up to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe to just do a quick background, but you've served in leadership roles for over 20 years, companies like Ivanti, Saranti, and Avocent. What do you think you learned in those roles that prepared you for the opportunity at Instructure?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there's a ton of life lessons when you get as old as I am. But one of the things that I love to share is when I was doing Saranti was a startup. We got seed funding. Our first round was tranched. So, we didn't get it all up front. We had to hit a few milestones. Like, I think our second tranche was about getting letters of intent. So we were trying to OEM a product, and it looked like we weren't going to get there. And I had worked probably for 6 months before we finally got this funding without a salary. And I was kind of freaking out. I was thinking, we're going to run out of money. I don't have any left in savings. I used it all up already. And so I started to get really, really nervous. And so at the time, it was back when Novell was around in its prior form, and they had brought in a new CMO, and I heard that this new CMO was looking to kind of revamp his team, and so I reached out and set up an interview with him, and he took the interview, and so I was getting ready for that interview because I thought, oh man, I gotta find a way to get health insurance and salary and all that kind of stuff, and right before I got on the call, I was just sitting there and I was thinking, you know what, I can't bail, right? I gotta be in or out, and I need to just see it through. So I got on the call with him and I said, hey, before I waste your time, I got to stick it out. We got to see if this is going to work. I might be calling you in 3 months looking for a job, but I got to stick it out. So for me, that was kind of it was like a really, and then we ended up getting the tranched funding. We ended up actually selling the company about 13 months in on the hold. We sold it to Avocent, and so what it really taught me was, look, you gotta be all in or you gotta be all out.
Yeah, and Steve, that's a good segue actually to this next question. And it's interesting because we saw that behavior from you as you were on the board and thinking about whether you wanted to take this job or not. We were talking about that earlier. So now we understand the mental gymnastics you were going through. But before we get into Instructure more specifically, maybe talk a little bit about what it was like going from enterprise software companies with commercial end markets where you work to Instructure, which is obviously an EdTech company. So just talk us through that transition and maybe the pros and cons of working in the education market.
Yeah, it is different. And everybody would tell me that. And I'd like, whatever. It's software you're selling, people got to buy it. It's, how could it be that different? And when I got on my first, I went on a big listening tour when I started, and I got on my first call with, I think it was a user group we had down in Florida. And unsolicited, I just introduced myself, and this person jumps on and goes, so the thing that you got to remember, Steve, is that when we were doing endpoint security, right? Desktops, laptops, mobile devices, securing those. He said, what you got to remember is when you were doing that, the endpoint for you was a device, And in our world, the endpoint is a student who's trying to improve their life or improve their family's life and things like that. So, I kind of I might have actually rolled my eyes a little bit, and I'm like, okay. But as I've really gotten into it, what I've really recognized is, one, people that go into education do it. I mean, they do it out of a sense of mission. And I've seen that in our own company, as far as we hire a lot of former educators, that everybody feel almost to the point when when I first got on board, where one person asked me why we have to make profit, and so I was like, okay, all right, we got some education here, but but there is this just intense focus on the mission of educating people, which on the with that comes this kind of distrust of corporate America, to be quite honest. And so you have to kind of overcome that. You have to really be authentic with educators. But when you do, they become super, super loyal, right? And so the good thing that I found is getting in and establishing that relationship is, your retention's really high. They want to buy more stuff from you. They really want to do business with you, but it takes some work, some long sales cycles to really to earn that trust with the customer.
Yeah, that's well said. And maybe just in terms of Instructures Mission and the problems that Instructures software helps its customers solve, talk a little bit about that. I mean, what did that look like when you first joined the company back in 2020? And then maybe talk about how that's evolved over time.
Yeah. So the company really was basically a one-product company. We came out with a Canvas learning management system with the whole goal of disrupting that market. It was early days in the cloud for education. The main competitor had 80% market share, was on-prem software, and really we came in and disrupted that entire market. Went from no market share to now we're the leading market share, and the challenge. I mean, the opportunity that was there was that we could do more. We could just go faster. The company, the mission was then just become the best LMS. And as we went through the take private, the company had lost its way a little bit in that they also wanted to go into corporate. I think driven a lot by a big TAM over there when they were going public and things. I think that kind of distracted them. So we went through the process of kind of shedding that business right out of the gate and really become focused 100% on education. And then as we started to do a lot of work with y'all on the market and what was, what educators were looking for, we recognized that the LMS really had become the platform for the digital transformation of education. It was the core foundational technology, and 90% of all instructional workflows touched the LMS. And so there was a lot of opportunity to try to bring all those pieces together and create more of a platform opportunity. Now, in that process, we also had to get fit. So the company, was losing money or close to break even, but we really had to train the organization on how do you make decisions, right? Because the modus operandi of the company before that was, oh, there's an opportunity. Let's go throw a dozen heads at it and go figure out, what's there. And there was all these like little side projects going on and all this, there was really not a lot of focus. And so we went through a process with the help of you all really to just really put some laser focus and teach the organization how to decision make, and make good decisions and bet on the few things that are going to matter to the organization.
Yeah, that's a great explanation, Jaffee. I'm going to go to turn real fast because I know you have another question, but only because Steve mentioned TAM, which has always been a huge subject for this company. I think it's a good follow-up question to ask, we had this thesis around refocusing on education, continuing. We thought there was enough market to continue to gain. Of course, we made some acquisitions to expand into tangential areas that are important and also present some new market opportunities. But the reality is, I think Canvas, you're probably half of all higher ed students, maybe a third of all school districts. How are you managing that? Is that a good thing, a bad thing? How do you continue to grow the company? How do you deal with those facts?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. So, our success has kind of got us to the point where, how much market share can you gain, and how quickly can you gain it? And so it is a challenge. Our core market is North America, and those, the market share points are North America. We still are pretty untapped internationally, and so a big part of our investment thesis has been, how do we expand outside of the U.S. But as I said earlier, the LMS is the core infrastructure for teaching and learning, and the things that happen inside of the classroom. So there are a lot of adjacencies to really go after, and dollars being spent, profit pools that we can kind of go after. And I think AI is going to open up even more of those for us, things that technology couldn't touch in the past. So we're really looking at how do we get a bigger share of wallet within education. And the reality is there's a lot of money being spent on education, and we're still really early in that digital transformation. And so it hasn't been without challenge, right? Figuring out how to cross sell, how to cross buying centers in the case where we have to tap into new budgets and things like that has been challenging. But that is the path forward. And the good thing comes back to again, we're the acknowledged leader, and everybody looks at us and says, "Hey, do more for us. We love working with you." I think it was the University of Washington Zoom had come in and said, "Hey, how do we work better with you?" And he said, "I just said, go talk to Instructure." And so, again, there's two sides of the coin. As you become the leader, you become the acknowledged leader. This is a very referential sale. It's very much about everybody, wants to be with the leader, but it does pose challenges. We've had to, work on, some new muscles. As a company to try to figure out how to continue to grow.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and Steve, as a follow-up to that, later in our hold period, Gen AI really started to explode. And so I'd say the first thing that we all kind of collectively started thinking through was, gosh, is this going to be like an existential issue for the company? I think we pretty quickly figured out it wasn't, and that it actually should be a really interesting tailwind for the business. But it was early, and we were starting to invest in it. Maybe talk a little bit about how the company has approached working with AI and utilizing it, and where you are now.
Yeah. No, it is. You're right. We did go through that. That kind of is this going to be a bad thing or a good thing sort of analysis, and what we, the generative AI really is going to affect a lot of the content producers, right? What it does is it kind of democratizes production of content, and so and anything that's really human intensive, like like tutoring and those types of things. And so for us, it actually opens up more opportunity for us to apply technology to some of these problems that had been pretty intractable in the past. But it also really depends on access to the data, right? And we have 15 years of data related to how people are using our technology, how that's being used in the teaching and learning environment, and so that kind of data moat that we have really allows us to train models in a way that's unique, that a startup that came into the space just wouldn't have access to that kind of data. And so for us, it's going to be a long-term opportunity. It kind of builds again on this idea of, here you are, the leader. They want you to be successful. They want to do more business with you as customers. And because of that, we've got a competitive advantage over somebody that might try to come in and disrupt us.
Makes sense. Steve, it's interesting. I've been doing this a long time in my business, just like you have in yours. And I know selling a company is one experience for the investors. It's very different experience for the management team. So last summer, we announced the sale of Instructure to KKR. I'm curious what that experience was like from your perspective at the time, and kind of having the benefit now of some time with that and some hindsight. Has it, what it's like now?
Yeah. So I've been through a number of exits. So, and the process is all very similar. What I found, what I think particularly with this process, first of all, we were a public company, so I'd never been through a process like that. Right. And there was a lot of caution about what you can and can't say, how we, the data that's already out there in the public markets, and what are we going to provide in addition. So there was some kind of nuances to doing the process this way. And what I found was that, as we went through this process, the thing that really helped me, the thing that I kind of I hadn't had and I hadn't realized in previous processes was, I think Brian and I probably talked almost every day during this process. There was a lot of communication back and forth.
Did you enjoy that?
Did
you enjoy talking to Brian every day?
Yeah.
You don't have to answer.
Don't lie.
It was great. Yeah. But no, it was great because Brian, because I could call up Brian and say, well, how should I position this, right? How should we be talking about this with the potential investors, or, they're asking for this. Do you think that's appropriate? So I found that it was what I kind of learned from the process was, one, it was great to have that transparency between us. And that was from 4 years of relationship, right? Talking on a regular basis. But it also helped me as a leader because I recognized that a lot of my direct reports, right, were going through a similar thing, right? Not sure how they should be talking about this. And it caused me to kind of look back and, be much more, maybe transparent or just more communicative in the process, because you get so bound up in this process, right? And you get so, it consumes you when you're going through that process. And that I needed to be a lot more communicative with my direct reports as well as with the company as a whole, because I found that it was super, super valuable in that process. And so when I look back, this was probably the least painful. I wouldn't say it was painless, but I'd say it was the least painful exit that I've gone through. And even though there was a lot of unknowns that I hadn't dealt with in the past.
I've done a lot of exits with Brian. I know he's very, very good at staying on top of it. And it was a time when there weren't many $5 billion deals announced last year. Right. So you both deserve a lot of kudos for that.
Yeah, Steve, thanks for not answering that question. Honestly, I appreciate it. And I'd say now that you're 6 months in or so, with a new owner, new strategy, maybe just talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the broader EdTech market. I mean, we know, having lived it now with Instructure and actually another business we used to own called Frontline, how much innovation happens in this space, how much venture capital is, chasing companies at the lower end of the market, and so. For these bigger scaled players, you've got to be all over those trends and where you want to invest and where the company's going. Maybe talk a little bit about some of the exciting things that you're seeing in EdTech right now.
Yeah, it's as a lot of the world is right now. It's a little bit of crazy town going on, right? The Department of Ed's getting defunded. There's grant money's getting cut off. There's a ton of things happening in education right now. There's a few things that we're seeing. One is, education actually, when they look at what's happening just from a federal level, most of the presidents that I talk to say this is a good thing that there was too much regulation, there was too much influence that the federal government was having, and then in the same breath they say, but yeah, you could have done this a little more gracefully than just kind of blow everything up, and so I do think there's kind of a sense of optimism as far as maybe we can just go do our thing and not have to worry about some of this regulatory oversight. The other thing that's happening is that there's been a real, probably since the pandemic, but it probably started even before then, was this question about what's the return on investment on an education, and people are thinking about it differently. I just got off a call just a few hours ago with the provost at one of the big online schools, and they basically said, whereas they used to be really focused on adult education and people that had some college, no degree, they're getting a lot of kind of 18-year-olds that want to come in and just do their education online 100%, want to work while they're doing it, and so there is a need and an opportunity to really start to bring together not just the in-class sort of, how do I do this, that deliver teaching and learning in class, but how do I do it in a hybrid manner? How do I do it in a way that, rather than historically the way that you've evidenced that you're learning is you get a diploma, right? Which is kind of right at the end. So how do you evidence along the way that I'm learning stuff, that I've got, I get these certificates or these badges, and so the industry really needs somebody to kind of step in and pull that all together. There's a lot of really cool stuff happening, and generative AI is just getting embedded, not as a separate product, but it's making those user interfaces so much more intuitive, making it so much easier for both teachers and students to interact with the technology and helping make them way more effective. Now, in the industry as a whole, there was a ton of VC funding that went into EdTech in the pandemic era, and they're not necessarily, they're starting to get at the tail end of their investment periods, or they're not willing to kind of re-up on them, and so there's going to be an opportunity for somebody like us, a consolidator, to start to really roll this up over the next 3 to 4 years, and it's going to be really exciting from that perspective.
Well, that's great. Maybe that's part of the answer to this next question, which is more general. But just what are your hopes for the company as you look out in the future?
Yeah, that is the great segue into somebody needs to do this. This is one of those industries that hasn't had a platform emerge that's going to digitize the whole process and do it in a way that is integrated and doesn't require 450 apps. In fact, our latest research shows that a typical K-12 district uses about 3,500 different applications in the teaching and learning and education process. And so that's what I hope is that we're skating fast enough to the puck that we're going to be the ones that the industry looks to be that consolidator, to bring everything together, and to do it in a way that meets that this idea that education isn't just going to high school, applying to college, getting a degree and getting a job, but gives the learners flexibility in the way that they want to learn.
Well, Steve, thanks for all your time. It's always great to reconnect and get update and really learn more about the mission that Instructure represents. Really appreciate your time. It was an awesome conversation. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks to Steve for coming on today. If you like this episode, be sure to listen to next week's episode of Beyond the Deal, our mini-series where we get to ask him anything. I'm Brian Jaffee. Thanks for joining us.